Okay, so not being very good at dividing 620 by 2, but anyway, for a wavelength of 620 picometers, a resonator would have to be half that, so 310 picometers. Okay? All right. Now, my logic might be wrong in the next slide as well, but we'll see. I am stating that all moving electrons inside the non-radiating boundary, which is a sphere defined by this radius, are in a strong magnetic field. Okay? So if we got moving electrons inside this non-radiating boundary, they are in a strong magnetic field. Okay? And then I am arguing that this is our 48 subdivisions, but it doesn't matter, it doesn't need to be 48. But there is something going around here. Let's say electrons do go around here, whether they're going directly through the cores of the subtors or whether they're going around in a spiral, whatever. I decided to take the distance across here as the equivalent of the 320 picometers. And just because you can't see my drawing there, I've zoomed in here. So in my model here, this equivalent equates to 1 meter between the central loop here. Now, my logic here is we're looking for the smallest structure that needs to be stable. And I think that the stable structure, the first time you get a vacuum current, that is electrons able to move around permanently without decaying, is when you have a wheel within a wheel within a wheel. So you need a third order Tor structure. So you need the n level, the n-1 level, and the n-2 level. Now in this one I've not got the n-1 arranged on the golden ratio line. It just makes it easier for me to see what I'm doing, and I haven't got the n-2, but so I'm having to approximate, okay? And I will do a better version of this and a better calculation a little bit down the line, but I think you're going to get my point in a minute. So this is 1 meter. Now the n-2, the n-1 level would be a loop going around here, orthogonal, okay? And then the other one would be an orthogonal loop to that in the last plane that leads to the vacuum current being able to go around here at this, which we want to be 320. Okay, so the n-2 distance is actually less than 83.67 millimeters on my diagram. The reason I say less than is because this is the outer part of the torus. So the inner part will be somewhere in here and it'll actually be in the middle there. So I will actually do my homework and come up with what it should be, but this is just for approximating it, okay? So if we take the 310 picometers and we times that by 83.67 divided by 1,000, that's the millimeters, we end up with 25.94 picometers, less than. So the smallest loop, this one down here, which I've zoomed up here, I actually have it correctly here, but it's only on a 2-order structure, okay? So this is the wheel, the n level, this is the n-1 level, this is the n-1 level, and this is the n-2 level. And so you can imagine that the loop of the electron orbit here would be on the inside of this torus, okay? So this is an overestimation of the size. It's going to be smaller than that. And what is the size of atomic hydrogen? It is 25 picometers. Boom! I am arguing that hydrogen, atomic hydrogen, effectively is your nucleus is in the center of the phase singularity here, and the electron is orbiting around. And that is the smallest Tor subquanta that you can get. Now, I'm not saying that because you can get coherent matter in each of these clusters, that it can't be much, much more. But what I'm saying is the reason that observed by Ken Shoulders, you only see 2 kilo electron volt electrons, is that using synchrotron radiation with the electrons spinning around here in this vacuum current, and the vacuum current we know needs a wheel within a wheel within a wheel at least, right? We need a wheel within a wheel within a wheel to get our vacuum current of our electrons spinning around this circular ring, okay? Inside this intense magnetic field structure, we'll get synchrotron radiation. That will be able to produce photons. The photons can be high energy, up into the X-ray range, and the photons can come out here and hit the metal, and the metal will release, therefore, 2 kilo electron volt electrons, which can come out of the weak zone. Or go out through the top, whatever. They're coming out somehow, right? And so I possibly, from thinking about ball lightning, the mode of ball lightning that produced crop circles, thinking about the claim that crop circles might be producing magnetron effects, and thinking actually, no, well, the magnetron can't get us up to X-rays, and it doesn't quite work in the same way, but the vacuum current here is controlled by this intense magnetic fields, these toroidal magnetic fields. Then we have a scenario where it could be producing photons that have the right wavelength to have the right energy to produce the 2 kilo electron volt photons, electrons rather. And therefore we potentially have a lower bounded limit, which is exactly the smallest nuclei, atomic hydrogen. That's it. There's a lot more that I wanted to discuss tonight about crop circles. I will go into the paper at another time, the patent. Let me go and look at this. If I can find it here. I will do a separate presentation on the patent because it is very important that I give it due credit for what it is saying. There are many, many data points in that patent which would also support the findings. There is also, so I'm going to do possibly, am I going to be about? I think next week again, I'm going to do part 2 of this. I'm going to share some papers, but essentially, because of study of crop circle effects, W.C. Levengood established a method of treating seeds, and the observations are consistent with other methods of improving seed germination and the life of plants. And he was using I've got to bring it up. I can't do it like this. I have to show you. Oh, let me get this. Oh dear. Yeah. So the key points of this patent was that were essentially from these effects on seed growth. While seeds taken from surrounding crops grew at normal rates, seeds from the formations grew up to 4 times slower in 90% of the measured formations, because these were formations that were caused during the seeds, the plants pre-flowering or not mature seeds. And it's because of the way the damage to the bit that allows the seed kernel to grow, it means it damages it in its growth. But intriguingly, Levengood's results showed stunted growth came from the crop circles that appeared early in the season in immature crops prior to anthesis. We looked at this earlier. However, he also reported that if the seeds were grown instead removed from circles etched in mature crops, then the growth rate was increased 5-fold. This observation, and so I'm going to talk about this at length in the second part of O'Day crop circles. But let me get the patent just to go over a couple of points. Where did I put that? Where did I put it? I want to get my noted version of it. Not there. Not there. Come on. Talk amongst yourselves. Thank you for sticking with me. I know it's been a long one. Okay, so here is the patent. A method and apparatus for treating seeds with self-organized avalanches of electrons. Oh my God, what does that sound like? Self-organized avalanches of electrons between electrodes as cathode and anode, with seeds between the anode and cathode or on the anode. Apparatus circuit T200 provides simultaneous DC and AC between the electrodes, which creates an avalanche of electrons which project into the seeds. The seeds must be stored before planting. The seeds so treated have enhanced growth characteristics. What you are going to see is the same method for producing birdies that was deployed by Alexander Shishkin in his study and his team study at the nuclear research facilities in Dubna in Russia. It's the same kind of spark gap discharge system that was employed by Dr. Alexander Parkhomov in his study into relic neutrinos. These two things are intrinsically linked. It's to do with the breakdown voltage in air and the limits to that. And so you will see that I think there's no way that W.C. Levengood could not have had conversations with Ken Shoulders. I just can't believe. Or he was studying Ken Shoulders' work. But essentially here, you have a means of picking up the spark discharge rate. You have a mesh on which you place your seeds, and you have your field emission gap here and a power supply. That's essentially it. This is a coil to pick up. Now, what they are saying here in this technology is that using this coil, they can pick up the charge clusters effectively that are emitted are outside of the apparatus, and they can use this coil to track whether the discharge rates are correct. What this goes to show you is that charge clusters are being emitted into the environment, and this device will need shielding, the type that I have talked about a couple of weeks ago. Okay, so any device using this will need to keep the operators healthy. Okay. These are different kilovolts of spikes. I will do a whole separate presentation on this next week in part 2 because the significance is too high. And, you know, depending on the kilovolts between this 8 centimeter gap here, different seeds have different potential positive and even sometimes negative growth rate. So 5 in this particular seed growth rate, it changed very significantly. 30% difference in growth when it was exposed to 5 kilovolts. This is, I think, in a different seed type and so forth. So this is one determination way they looked at the redox potential caused after the exposure, and this was a proxy for how well the seeds had been treated. Okay, it doesn't necessarily go into the mechanism of what's causing them to grow so well. Okay, This goes to show the redox ratio in carrot tops. This is using the probe coil, so as a proxy for detecting the emissions. And it's all very well described. If I can zoom out of here, this is fantastic for anyone that has grown crops. This is just spectacular and important information. I know it's on the side, but like I say, I'll put this into a proper presentation and walk through it in more detail next week. But here you have these treated seeds and the control seeds here. They start off by having 48 seeds treated or untreated. And you can see here the number of days, the number of hours after planting when the seeds start appearing. So the worst thing you can do is plant 100 seeds in the garden and you know 30 of them never come up, right? Or 40 of them never come up, or even worse, sometimes like most of them never come up, or that they come up so after such a long time that you know you don't get to even understand whether you're going to get a crop in that field. But here we go. If this is hours, then 238 hours here is 10 days. Okay, so we've got a 10-day point here. With the untreated seeds, firstly, even at the, 10 days, 12 days, it's after 12 days, so you're getting on for 2 weeks here. The untreated seeds are significantly less observed germinating, and at the end of this period, there's still a significant number haven't germinated. But if you look here in this control group 2, at the 286 hour point is, 30 seeds have germinated there, but that's already happened at 173 in this case, so like 173 hours. So it's more than 100 hours before you got the same number of seeds coming up. Okay, this is just so much better for a farmer. Okay, again, massive increases in the speed of emergence in the field. This is sweet corn, this is bicolor, different type of sweet corn. These are early ear development, so like they've got different voltages applied, and they can see in this case they got the ears are developing earlier. This means you can harvest the crop quicker, you've got a shorter growing season, less risk involved there. Again, much earlier here, you know, carrots. I mean, it's just several things. This patent is available for anyone to use because it is April. This was published April 1998. It's actually from 1996, and so we can be free to use this. And so I would like studies done on this, and for us to come up with our own verified seed growing, germination, and stuff. But there's just immense implications. So yeah, so essentially he goes through a number of prior art, and he talks about using microwaves. He actually talks about some of his previous work in 1974, patents in 1987, patents in 1988. So he has 3 patents trying to improve seed germination prior to actually studying ball lightning. Crop circles. But it's only after crop circles does he. So this is actually priority 1996. So in 1994, he describes genetically transferring DNA between plants using constant DC voltage. So like this is before he's really considering what his findings are in crop circles, and it was based on his paper in 1991. Okay, so this is before he was really studying crop circles. Okay, so his last patent. So all of these patents didn't really work. 1974, 1987, something in 1988 by someone else, and in 1994 also talks about voltages between 300 and 220,000 volts DC, and then someone else uses this range, and then someone else uses microwaves or whatever. But in other patterns of general interest relating to ultrasound, and this one relating to microwaves. So they're trying everything to try and make seeds grow better. There was one using AC ripple and DC current to produce pulses here. Pulses of ions were produced from wire brush emitters to flood growing plants in the field. So this is actually doing it in the field, which is highly inefficient, okay? It's not used with seeds, okay? So there is clearly a need for a reproducible and reliable method for treating seeds. Anyway, to cut a long story short, and we will go through this in detail, but just like in the system of plasma, water flow plasma discharge in Bogdanovich et al., they have a DC voltage bias and an AC or pulsed ripple. This is the same thing going on in the Vega experiment. This is the same thing going on in the systems of Suhas-Ralkar. Many different systems have used this approach. And what you are doing, therefore, is you want a DC bias so that any charge clusters formed drift from the cathode to the anode. It's in front of the anode that you would have your seeds. Then you have the AC ripple, and the AC ripple goes from not sufficient field emission, or sorry, not sufficient space charge to allow for the dielectric breakdown, to going through the necessary dielectric breakdown. And ideally, because we know about this, we want to keep that under 2 kiloelectron-volts. Okay, but it's over a distance, so it's a certain amount. It's like, I think it's half a kiloelectron-volts per centimeter or something. So they've got 8 centimeters, and 8 centimeters, that's 4 kiloelectron-volts. Okay, so they want something around that to start getting it to break down, and then as it goes through, it's going to create these self-organized plasma structures, and that is literally what it says in this paper. Okay, and then they talk about leaving the seeds that are treated for a period of time before planting them, and I will give my perspective on why that is important next week. Okay, I will share this paper. I'm looking for anyone's interesting input, but I think when you understand how these charge clusters work, then you can understand how they will accelerate life, like I was talking about in the last couple of weeks, and the risks and benefits for that, and how they might damage things at certain stages and be beneficial at other stages. Anyway, I think this is a profound implication for food security the world over. It is an open patent now because it is now expired. There were several licensee companies, one in Australia, I think, one in China, one in Italy, but it's open season now for this technology. And I would like to see trialed technology based on this, which is very well done, a good research program to explore it, and then to have, systems that people can build as a minimum viable product, but also where we can have a system where these are like conveyor systems, and you can just choose to have your seeds treated or not for a fee or whatever, and we end up with better yields and stronger plants, more disease resistant. If they're disease resistant, then they're going to prevent need less pesticide control with chemicals and so forth. Both this technology and the technology of treating water, could be considered organic because they're not using chemicals, and that's it really. So essentially, what have we learnt today? Well, First off, we've learnt that there are real reasons why the southeast of England possibly has been a hotspot for crop circles. Yes, 100% there are people faking these things. But what we've also looked at is there's very, very clear evidence that iron-rich crenellated spheres, possibly, not necessarily crenellated, but I suspect they are, iron-rich spheres that are magnetic, therefore they're not rust, hematite or magnetite, or even this FeO2 material, potentially. And these crusts, potentially because of intense magnetic flux tubes. We've talked about the magnetic flux tubes in Lion. We've talked about it in Vega experiments. We've seen what they do. We've seen these things are probably happening in the thunderstorm generator. Almost certainly they're happening also in the Hutchison effect. And it's able to shift iron and also purify the iron. Okay, is it synthesizing the iron? Maybe. It seems like it's certainly doing organization of matter. Whatever. Definitely charge clusters involved, and these things are potentially attracted to this world's deepest aquifer in the south of England. World's deepest chalk aquifer. And that this very specifically leads to a different space charge arrangement over that ground, which is accentuated in the summer and late summer at the times that crops can be exposed to charge in the sky, and leading to this pull down of charge, possibly even from the upper atmosphere, leading to these structures. Now, if you knew this, if you knew, as my father did, there was this incredible aquifer under the south of England, and you knew of people that had these balls in the sky, as my father certainly did in 1979, and you knew as a Mason that the symbol of God-controlled power, this symbol that is around the Sumerian gods' necks, that is stylized in the Maltese cross, which is just a stylization of it. The Maltese cross also in those Sudanese ionic columns, along with the ordinary form. If you knew all this, and then you knew that this had been written into the crop and you showed me, I think you would be part of a community that had either a deep understanding of this or that was trying to find a way to get this information to the world. I want to say a thank you to my father. I don't know what you were doing to me as a child, programming me, whatever, but thank you. It's been a very interesting journey. And I look forward to meeting you one day again. I do not believe there is any coincidence in this particular crop circle. When I've got it there, I'll get it there. Give me a second. I don't think there's any coincidence. This is not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto studied crop circles. Chalk aquifer. I don't think it's a coincidence that this symbol and this symbol were chosen to be shown here. I firmly believe that this symbol is representing this structure, the subcores and the main magnetic core, and that this is a representation of the top of the 444 made of into a 4. wheel within wheel within wheel, top of the altar in the Knights Templar underground these are ceremony rooms on the top of the altar here. I think it cannot be coincidence that if you take the overall wheel within wheel within wheel structure and you look at this and scale it to this, it is approximately correct with the N-1 core as well. I do think that this is oxygen and this is hydrogen, and this is kind of representing that, but also the fractal nature of the overall structure. That the observation, which I have never had a proper explanation for the observed electrons that come out of an exotic vacuum object when it's going from the white to the black mode, that these possibly are the result of this interplay that can occur where photons can produce electrons by hitting a metal. We know there is metal in the center of these things, that is this metal, iron, and so the photons in that structure can hit the iron at 2 kiloelectron volts and produce 2 kiloelectron volt electrons, and the wavelength of 2 kiloelectron volt photons is approximately 620 picometers. I might be wrong in this calculation and I would like people to check the work. I believe that this could define the typical lower bound of the TORs in the average EVO. For the wavelength of 620 picometers, resonator would have to be half. If I assume that the resonator is across here and the electrons are going around here, this is half, this is one half of the cycle, this is the other half of the cycle, this is one half of the cycle, this is the other half of the cycle, this is the resonant cavity. Then from my model, this is 1 meter. This is an approximation because if I show you here the sub-TOR, sub-sub-TOR, it would have a loop inside that. And so if you take the 83, you divide it by 1,000, you end up with doing the resonator times this, because you need to make this vacuum current, this electron accelerator loop, which is inside this magnetic field, to produce your synchrotron radiation, your X-rays. You need a wheel within a wheel within a wheel minimally. We learnt this from the Schwerblis paper, and this leads to something under 25.94 picometers. I suspect it's a reasonable amount under that, and I will do the proper calculation in the coming days. And the atomic radius empirically derived for hydrogen, atomic hydrogen, that's a proton with an electron, is 25 picometers. I do not believe this is a coincidence. I believe that this potentially is the cause for the emission of 2 kiloelectron volt X-rays, 2 kiloelectron volt electrons by impact with the core, the metal core, from the photons. And somehow they're getting out, okay, the electrons, either through here or through here, probably, one or the other. And that is it, I think, for today. So this was O-Day crop circles, part 1. Thank you very much for your time. Buenas noches, dobro noc, good night. I will have a look through your questions. Please ask me questions in the remoteview.icu blog. Total honor to be doing this. I can't express to you. And I'm sure there's going to be huge revelations in the Russian work next week. I will do whatever I can to get that translated to you. Thank you very much, Dak. Thank you very much, Verity Hound. That's, wow. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. For me, what's come out of this week is I know I can now pretty much reasonably conclude how the Kilbini stealth system works for Russian planes. If you don't know what that Kilbini is, it's a mountain range in Russia, but they've named this stealth system in it. You basically have these two tubes that you put on either side of any old plane, and it can produce a bubble in which loads of planes can travel, and they can't be seen. There's a thank you, Verity Hound. Thank you. That's very kind. And so you can imagine by spinning up these electrodynamic structures, you can end up with absorbing radar, reflecting radar, and as I said earlier, by changing the pulse stimulation electrodynamically and phasing it, you could actually create objects in the sky which can't be seen but can absorb radar, or can not be seen visually but can produce shaped structures that have the thermal signature of your plane, but not where your plane is. You can shield your plane, but with secondary emissions, because you're using scalar interferometry, you can produce virtual targets for thermal signature heat-seeking missiles. And this is one of the claims for the Kilbini electromagnetic countermeasures system that's claimed for it. And so you do not need to have a stealth aircraft. You can have a whole group of aircraft being enveloped with this stealth bubble. And you can even use the same system to maybe create fake balls of light that are moving around your aircraft. When you understand the implications of this technology, I mean, it's like a kid in the candy shop. There's so much you can do with it. But I don't like killing, and I don't like more efficient ways of killing. I do like ways to more efficiently grow food and store food and produce energy in a clean and environmentally sound way. And whilst all of that is going on, keeping everyone safe that's around the equipment that's doing those jobs. So we have an unbelievably bright future ahead of us. And when I go through that patent next week, you will realize, and some other work of Levengood, you'll realize, my God, he must have been talking to all of the right people. I mean, there's other things that I could have showed you today, and you'll go, oh, seriously? Seriously? Thank you, Corky. Wow. Thank you. Oh, God, I'm going to read some of your comments. It's not quite 2 o'clock here yet. Why haven't they rolled out this tech and around the Ukraine? It seems the Russians have lost quite a few airframes. I don't know what the statistics are. Do we really know what the statistics are? What's your take on James Webb's Armada heading towards us? And then, I don't know. I've not seen that story. I'll have to look into it. Yeah. Thank you, Charles William Thomas Greenyer. Wow. Wow. It's so many things he said now are flooding into my mind, and like, I mean, maybe at some point when I was a kid and I didn't know it, I was forced to learn these things. I just don't know anymore. But whatever, I'm doing what I can to get it out. If it is something that I was taught, I don't know. Do any Hutchison samples show signs of the metal grains reorienting in the spiral patterns? What they do is they show what we also observed in Henk urine structures. You end up with an area that's affected, and inside the affected area there's loads of little dimples. And looking at the Henk urine sample, and I can actually show this on an aluminium sample. In fact, it's one of the backgrounds I showed in ICCF 25 presentations. It's basically a scalloped sphere in aluminium, and it has multiple scallops inside that big scallop. And in each of the scalloped substructures, there is iron concentration in the center of that aluminium substructure. And then in the overall macro sphere, hemispherical section out of the material, there is a copper geodesic structure in the center. It's a thing of incredible beauty. So yeah, I shared that, and I will be talking more about that in the future. But you can see these kind of fractal structures within each other. And what I see is you have a superfluid thing, and when you rotate a superfluid, you get hexagonal substructures that rotate in the same direction. And it's like it's like how a superfluid moves. Okay. Well, I mean, G the Skater is saying, I would love you to delve deeper into how the aquifers and subterranean rivers are essential to life. Well, my father tried to teach me to dowse, and I think that because I'm electrosensitive and because he did try to teach me, maybe I'm going to give it a go. There's a place down the road I can buy some dowsing rods, and I'm going to give it a go. If you look at the 4th chapter in Dr. Alexander Parkhomov's book, Space, Earth, Human, he talks about dowsing because of N radiation, which is relic neutrino radiation, interacting with metals and water, and I'm saying it's the oxygen in the water, and the spine has intervertebrate distances that makes it an antenna for this radiation, which can then be channeled through right and left rotation and cause the dowsing to work. So, you know, these things are just so obvious, really, when you kind of understand the underlying principles. Yeah, so Alex del Castillo, Excalibur was doped with Evos by the Lady of the Lake, glowing the metal. So Excalibur in the Sword and the Stone, it was actually 2 metals. You had the steel metal and the anvil metal, which was probably iron. This is very similar to the Sword in the Stone, where you have 2 metals. You have the steel and the aluminium. And I think basically, if the legends are true, Arthur was very good at controlling charge clusters. The original steel of the sword was completely replete with charge clusters, and he was able to intentionally, through telekinesis and control, energize these structures with his own chi and be able to pull the sword from the stone. Yeah, the limestone is very, very important with regard to the pyramid. I've talked about this. When you have the magnetohydrodynamic system set up, the chi harvester in the pyramid, which is correctly aligned magnetically and it's correctly aligned east-west for the structure to work. You have calcium carbonate in there. Calcium and carbon and oxygen, they're all non-spin nuclei except calcium-43. I very specifically said that all of these non-spin nuclei don't get affected by the flux loop in the same way that spin nuclei do. And when you have the flux loop going through with the chi released from the hydrogen, from proper charge separation of hydrogen, then the magnetic flux loop that goes through with the raw current loop, the vacuum current loop with the chi, that will actually capture the calcium-43. So it's my prediction that in the so-called sarcophagus, there would be a white powder that would be predominantly calcium-43, and it would have bound to it and the oxygen that's possibly captured along with it condensed etheric matter. And so the showbread baked with the muktva, with the manna, would be this stuff that would be produced in that sarcophagus. Yeah. I'm not going to be here all night. No, I'm going to go soon. Three. I have a lot of extremely nice 50 megapixel images in high bit depth, which I will share about the underground. And some of the artifacts that were dug up there from Roman and claimed even pre-Roman times. Amazing. And yeah, it's very, very clear that there was deep understanding of how the fundamentals of nature worked. And that's it. Just it. It's the lies I can't deal with. Yeah, for those that caught the recording, which because the person said he doesn't want this in public forum, it has to be behind the paywall. Sorry, but that's the way it is. He talks about that in Iberia there are records of the more correct Bible. Thank you above all things. That's very, very kind of you. Thanks for all of the super chats tonight. Just so you get Vanilla Isis, thank you, and also thank you Vanilla Isis for your images that you sent through to rescue me today. I will get better images out of those. Thank you to Gary Johnson, Muggle One. Thank you to Black Tie. Thank you to Verity Hound, Dak. Thank you to Corky Goss, and above all things, really, what a time to be alive. What a responsibility. Yeah, so. Yeah, Tammy's saying Robert Sefer discusses the more correct Bible. Yeah, I really need to go and review presentations at Cosmic Summit. Yeah, love is the superpower for sure. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to call it a night. Thank you very much for all of your donations, your time. Please, I would, I can't overstate the significance of the findings of W.C. Levengood. You will see that many of the things that I've said over the years, he also had already said, and that I am firmly of the belief that crop circles can both be naturally formed and electrodynamically engineered. I think that using the electrodynamic engineering, we can very precisely print things into crops and that they will hold that form, and that we are looking in these two crop circles at the two key crop circle formations that explain the importance of the role of oxygen and hydrogen in this God-controlled power, i.e. water, and that to get it under control you need the 4 subtor structure. And the level of precision in what they showed with this is breathtaking, and it matches the Templars' ancient diagrams, and that possibly these heights are very, very close to the calculated wheel within a wheel within a wheel structure necessary to produce a vacuum current. A vacuum current is caused by a flow of electrons moving in a closed loop, or rather the Poynting vector, but whatever. I think we're very close to having an understanding of what causes the 2 kilo electron volt electron emissions, and I think it is limited by the size of the hydrogen atom as empirically determined. So with that, I will say again, thank you very much. Buenas noches. Good night. Dobranoc. Thank you, Matthew Reynolds.